"You look tired, sir," said the little girl on the plane. The CEO didn't expect that she'd change his life forever. The rain hit the airport windows in tiny, rhythmic drops as people rushed through the terminal, phones in hand, hearts elsewhere. Among them walked Daniel Graves, a man everyone in the corporate world knew, the ruthless, unshakable CEO of Graves International Holdings. His company built empires, yet Daniel himself had built a wall so high that even he couldn't see beyond it anymore. The world saw him as powerful, but behind the expensive suit, the polished watch, and the unreadable expression of broken bar, he was exhausted, lonely, and quietly breaking. The flight to New York was just another business trip, another board meeting, another room full of faces pretending to care. Daniel walked into first class, sat by the window, loosened his tie slightly, and shut his eyes. He wanted silence. He wanted the world to disappear for just a few hours. Then he heard Ida's soft, innocent voice beside him. "You look tired, sir." Daniel opened his eyes and turned. Sitting next to him was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with curly hair, big brown eyes, and a pink backpack decorated with stickers. Her legs barely reached the floor. She smiled shyly. He managed a polite nod. "I guess I am. My mommy says when people look tired, it's because their hearts are heavy," she said thoughtfully, swinging her legs. "Is your heart heavy, too?" The question hit him harder than he expected. He blinked, trying to find an answer. No one had asked him anything like that in years. "Maybe," he said finally. "Maybe it is." The girl nodded seriously. "Then you should rest your heart, not just your eyes." He smiled faintly, amused and strangely touched. "You sound very wise for your age," she grinned. "That's what my daddy used to say." Daniel felt something shift inside him. "Used to say." There was a quiet sadness in her tone that made him turn toward her fully. "Your dad isn't with you." She shook her head, looking down at her backpack. "He went to heaven last year. Mommy says he watches over me every time I fly." Daniel's throat tightened. He wasn't a man easily moved, but there was something about the honesty in her voice that reached through all the walls he'd built. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "It's okay," she whispered. "Mommy cries sometimes, but I tell her daddy wouldn't want us to be sad forever. He's too broken bar. We have to keep helping people smile." For the first time in a long time, Daniel didn't know what to say. As the plane took off, the girl chattered about her favorite cartoons, her puppy named Max, and how she was flying to New York because her mom was starting a new job. She talked, and Daniel listened. Really listened. Her laughter was pure, unfiltered, something he hadn't heard in his sterile, corporate world in years. After an hour, she leaned closer and asked, "Do you have kids, sir?" He paused. "Number. I never had time for a family." She frowned. "That's sad. Everyone needs someone to love them." He felt those words dig deep, more painful than any business failure could ever be. The truth was, Daniel had someone a woman who'd waited for him to come home, who'd asked him to slow down, to live. But he'd chosen his empire instead, and in the end, she'd walked away. The flight continued quietly for a while. The little girl drew pictures in her notebook, occasionally showing them to Hima's son, a dog, a smiling family. "That's my mommy. That's me, and that's daddy in heaven," she explained proudly. "One day, I'll make him a big painting so he can see it from the clouds." Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm sure he'll love it." She looked up and smiled. "You should draw too, sir. Maybe you'll feel better." He chuckled. "I'm not very good at drawing." "Doesn't matter," she said, handing him a pencil. "It's about what your heart wants to say." So he drew a simple picture, a small stick figure standing alone under a storm cloud. When she looked at it, she frowned, then began to draw beside Ida a bright sun, a bird, and another stick figure holding the first one's hand. "Now it's not lonely anymore," she said with a smile. Daniel couldn't remember the last time someone had done something so small yet so kind for him. When the plane finally landed, the little girl waved cheerfully as passengers began to leave. "Bye, Mr. Tired Heart. Don't forget to rest your heart, okay?" He smiled, really smiled for the first time in years. "I won't." But as she and her mother disappeared into the crowd, something inside him felt missing. On his seat, he found a folded piece of paper. It was her drawing of his sad little figure, with the sun and the bird and the smiling friend. On the back, In childish handwriting, it said, "Don't be lonely anymore, the world needs your smile too." Lily. Daniel sat there long after everyone had left. The noise of the airport faded away, and he stared at the note until his eyes blurred. That night, in his penthouse overlooking the city, he placed the drawing on his desk, and for the first time, he thought about more than numbers, meetings, and money. He thought about life, about love, about how much he had lost and how much he still could change. Weeks passed. Then, one morning, he called his assistant and said something no one expected. "Cancel my afternoon meetings. I'm visiting the children's hospital." He began donating not just money, but time. He funded new playgrounds, scholarships, and art programs for kids like Lily. Every month, he visited, sometimes sitting with children and helping them draw. And each time he looked at that little paper pinned to his office wall, he remembered the girl who had reminded him that even the coldest hearts can learn to feel again. Years later, during a charity event, a young girl and now a teenager walked up to him and smiled. "Do you remember me, sir? I once told you your heart looked tired." Daniel froze. "Lily?" She nodded, her eyes shining. "Looks like you rested your heart after all." He laughed softly, tears glistening. "You were right, Lily. You changed everything." The camera pans out to Daniel and Lily standing under bright lights, surrounded by laughter and life. A man who once had everything but love, now had a heart full of it. And that's the message for everyone watching us. Sometimes, one small kindness can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who might need a smile today, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. Because one kind word or broken bar can change the world.